All right, what's going on, Packer fans? Welcome into another episode of the Acme Packing Company and Pack-A-Day podcast joint venture with the one and only Justis Mosqueda. Of course, I'm Andy Herman. You can follow me on Twitter at Andy Herman NFL. You can follow him at JUMOSQ. Justis, we have another fun game to discuss. Before we get there, let me ask you, how are you doing?
I've watched my favorite football team just drop, what is it, 5 of their last 6 games at this
Yeah,
point?
yeah.
So, outside of that, doing okay, but that part really stinks.
It's not fun. It's definitely not fun. It's not fun going through and rewatching it and going through the all 22 and seeing a lot of the same mistakes, a lot of the same frustrations, a lot of all of that stuff, which we will get to and break down in great detail, of course, like we always do. Before we get there, I think we had some form of good news on Monday, and the fact that Rashan Gary signed his contract extension. Haven't had the opportunity to talk about this too much yet. So, 4-year extension. Takes him right up until basically right when he turns 30. He'll turn 30 in the December of that season of what the contract goes up until. So I always want to kind of keep guys right under that, usual 30 mark, which kind of is perfect for Green Bay. 4-year, $96.64 million extension. The numbers per season after this year, 15.9 million, 23.9 million, 26.4 million, and 29.4 million. Never hits that magical 30 number, which you always like to see from a Packers standpoint as well. What were your kind of big takeaways from this deal for Rashan Gary and the Packers?
Yeah, I thought it was a pretty happy medium between both sides. I know, can't remember if I talked about it with you, but it seems like this has been something that's been in the works for a while, which isn't surprising because he's in a contract season. I'd heard that his representatives had flown up to Green Bay, like during the bye week, for example, and they thought they were going to be able to get a deal done. They weren't able to land on a number. It's nice to see him land on a number that puts Rashan Gary near that top tier of guy, but doesn't push the Nick Bosa numbers, right?
Agreed.
That's what you have to be worried about. I think Gary, if you look at it, it's like fifth among edge rushers, which again isn't bad for a guy who started like a year and a half worth of games so
Yep.
far in his career, and is coming off of a major knee injury and is still on a pitch count. But it basically ends up working out to like the Nick Bosa contract with like 60 million shaved off of it. If the Packers really want to get out of the contract, they probably can. I think it was after 2025.
Yeah,
They'll
they could.
probably convert his salary next year, or not salary, the roster bonus, right? Which, for all intents and purposes, like just consider that salary. It just
Yeah.
gets paid out earlier. They'll probably convert that into a signing bonus and add a little bit more cap hits into the future. Stretch out that cap hit. So that cap number in 2024 is probably not going to be as high as you think it is. But I thought, hey man, if you can get him signed on the dotted line, like do it and move forward. You don't have to play the whole, trade deadline game with him this season. So that's nice.
Yeah, I'm totally there too. If you were to play devil's advocate, because I know some people out there, some weren't as happy with the deal. They thought that maybe it was overpaying. Is there any argument you can make, or even just being devil's advocate, as to why this would not be a good deal for Green Bay?
Um, I don't think it's really about the deal as much as it would be the player individually if you're gonna make that case, right? Where you're like, he's a two down player or whatever you want to consider a pass rusher in the NFL in today's game. And, he's not good at setting an edge and he does have that injury history. I think if you're putting yourself in that mindset, you have to look at it from that perspective because as a pure pass rusher, there's few people in football who are as good as Rashan Gary at what he does. So I think it'd be a tough argument to make if you're not considering those factors.
Yeah, I struggle making any arguments to not make this deal for Rashan Gary. As I mentioned, like all of the big things that I wanted to kind of see from a Packer side of things, again, didn't hit that 30 mil mark in any of those seasons. Now, like you said, they could restructure next year. And if they do, that's going to kick things out. And then at some point that will reach over 30 million for some of those future seasons. But the way that it's written as of now, I like all of those cap hits for the next 4 years.
These contracts too, or every contract in the NFL is a 3-year contract. But
Yeah.
if Gary is still worth keeping around after probably like in the 2026 season, right? If he's still worth keeping around, they will probably shred up that contract and just give him a brand new contract. And then, those cap hits look a whole lot different. No one really rides out their contract anymore.
True.
Like, that's not how 5-year deals work.
True. No, that's a fair point. And I think the other thing too, again, is, just from an age standpoint, he's at the perfect age to extend him. And I personally think, and we can make the debate if there's any other player you want to debate. I think he's the best player on the Packers right now on a team that just doesn't have very many high level players. He is one of them. And you can't really, you can't really risk losing him. And this is a team next year. I know nobody really wants to start looking at like salary cap situations next year. It's still not like super great. And putting him on a franchise tag and playing him on a franchise tag at an edge rusher franchise tag would really be a nightmare for Green Bay. So we don't really want to use the L word, the leverage word anymore, because it got so overused in the offseason. But I think the Rashan Gary and his agents had a decent amount of leverage here because of where he is on the team, and because Green Bay, I'm sure, does not want to use that franchise tag on him. And like you said, I thought this was a really nice deal for both sides. Top 5 edge rusher money for Rashan. Green Bay gets a solid deal. I have zero complaints, and I really like this deal for both sides.
Yeah, I mean, this is, if you're projecting everything, right? This is the kind of number that you hit on, right? It's like just under 25 million. He's not getting the Bosa money. It's closer to what like Myles Garrett got in 2020, all that stuff. They only added, I think it was like $1 million in terms of the cap hit with the extension on the immediate season. So I think Green Bay should have something like 5.5 million to play around with in terms of cap space moving forward. Obviously that would account for, players on injury reserve and stuff like that too. So it's not like they can just go grab a guy worth 5.5 and just add him to the team or anything like that.
But they have a little bit of wiggle room, which brings us to our next question. It is Tuesday, as most people are going to be listening to this, and it is officially trade deadline day. Justis, what are your expectations for trade deadline day for Green Bay?
I thought it was weird that they worked guys out on Monday. Did you see that?
I did see that. I saw it. Actually, I saw it on Acme Packing Companies where I saw it.
Hey, there we go. They usually don't work out guys on Monday, which to me makes me think. So if you don't know NFL schedule, the way it works out, right? Like guys come in on Mondays. Tuesday's really like an off day league wide for players. If they coming off of a Sunday game, going into a Sunday game type of thing. That's usually when they have like the workouts for guys who are on, practice squad visits or anything like that, or veterans coming in off of injury or something like that. Thought it was interesting. Green Bay did it on Monday because obviously Tuesday is the trade deadline. So does the front office think that they're going to be busy and preoccupied on Tuesday? Maybe. Interesting thought. I know Jay Glazer reported that the Green Bay Packers are still involved in the running back market. That was after talking about Derrick Henry and Saquon Barkley. He mentioned the Packers, Ravens, and Browns specifically as teams still in the running back market. Seems like the Ravens Derrick Henry trade stuff is now dead. So if the Titans aren't willing to trade Derrick Henry, who LaFleur obviously has a background with, he coached him as the offensive coordinator at Tennessee before he took the head coaching job with Green Bay. I guess that means Saquon is potentially on the market. Are the Packers willing to pull the trigger on Saquon? I don't know. I don't think they should make a move. I really don't. I don't think they should use future assets on this year's team. That seems dumb.
We are in lockstep per usual. I like even starting to get into next year of like what money that they could open up and pushing salary cap hits into future seasons. I would much rather this team get.
It's not good enough.
I know.
How much longer are we gonna like borrow from the future? We're already at a 2-5 team or whatever our record is. So
1,000,000%. Like I want this team to get financially responsible and like start eating as many of those salary caps as they can next year. Like get off of the veteran ones. And I know that's really hard for people to hear, and they want this team to be competitive. But I know you tweeted it out, and I have been thinking the exact same thing of like, if all of a sudden Green Bay starts getting ultra aggressive, whether it's at the trade deadline this year, even in like free agency next year, then to me, it screams of like, all right, Brian Gutekunst to Matt LaFleur, some form of them are really starting to feel the pressure, and the hot seat is really there. And they're now trying to save jobs rather than maybe make what ultimately is the best decision long-term for the Green Bay Packers, which happens. It's just real life. That happens in NBA, NHL, Major League Baseball, MLS, everywhere. It happens all throughout the league is guys have to start making decisions to try to keep their job to show that they can actually get wins in the win column. But yeah, you look at it, and that to me is not the direction that they should be heading in, as aggressively pursuing players. And any sign of that, whether again trade deadline or free agency, is to me it's too early, and that would give me some cause for concern.
The only saving grace here, if they do end up making a move at running back, is that's one of the two positions you probably would want to see some sort of long-term answer at, right? I think it's running back and safety are the two we would be looking at. Safety, obviously, no one's under contract moving forward outside of Anthony Johnson Jr., who gets like 4 snaps.
Do not forget about Zane Anderson, sir. Do not forget about Zane Anderson.
I'm going to be honest. I don't know how long Zane Anderson's contract is.
Yeah, I think he has another year left, my friend. I think he has. I think it's this year, next year. I think Anthony Johnson Jr. and Zane Anderson are the two that are actually under contract going into next year. So
that's a scary
never short Zane Anderson, if I've learned anything in life.
And then running back's obviously the other one, right? AJ Dillon's in a contract year. Aaron Jones is at the point in his contract where the cap hits just become a lot. What is it, $17.7 million or something like that that he's owed? David Bakhtiari's got the 40. Yeah, I mean, if you think that this is the year that the Packers are taking their medicine, this is a two-step process, right? This is like when you're mixing epoxy, right? You need one part A, one part B. Like, if we want to see this rebuild through, like year 0 is 2025. Like we still have to take our medicine next season too. The David Bakhtiari thing gets really interesting. I know Ken Ingles brought up the fact that like Bakhtiari might be like an injury grievance type of situation where even if he's not ready to play, like he still might be owed that money, which would then translate into a $40 million cap hit. Again, I think I recall this right. It would be the largest cap hit for any non-quarterback in the history of the sport. It's a bad contract, and they still haven't gotten out of it yet. So,
yeah, no, the Bakhtiari thing is a nightmare. It's just like, and hopefully, like the weird thing is hopefully he's available to play and he doesn't have an injury issue for multiple reasons. A, so that you can make the determination and decision if you want to keep him, or B, probably more importantly, if you want to get off the extra $20 million, $21 million in salary for him. Like that's a bigger thing where like if he's not ready to go, or like he's on PUP for the first 6 weeks, or he can't make the first half of the season or whatever, and the injury remains, like they're going to end up paying that dude next year, and that's going to be like, and he might not even play. Like it, I don't even want to talk. I've already cautious Justis from the tape and everything else. I don't think I can handle David Bakhtiari contract talk right now.
That's what I'm saying is like, hey guys, maybe hold on to your draft picks a little bit and don't give Saquon Barkley that extension. I also think the way that it works out now is if by the time that you're hearing this, the way the trades work out, no one will be able to eat money. So, like, if the Packers trade for Saquon Barkley, it's not like the Giants would be able to eat half of that salary and move on from him for the sake of, getting compensation back for an expiring contract or something like that. So, no one's coming to save your football team, and I don't think the Packers are one player away anywhere.
No, I do not expect them to be any sort of aggressive seller. Could maybe one smaller piece move out? Sure. Could they maybe
Deshaun makes
go
the most sense to me. Like he can be a return man, he can be a slot for a potential contender. It's not like the Packers are getting a whole ton of kick returns or punt returns or anything like that this season. So
yeah, no, that could be one. Just there's not a ton that makes sense, especially at this point, especially with some of the contract situations. So I don't expect them to really sell, and I don't like if they bought, and even if it was like a running back, like maybe Michael Carter from the Jets, if they want to move on from him or something like something small. I'd be surprised if there was something major from this team in the next, on Tuesday, but I don't know. Crazier things have happened, I guess.
Yeah.
It would also be like a sort of a kick in the groin too, of like, in the years that you were all in, you didn't make a move at the deadline, but now on a team that you're 2-5 with on the deadline, is the year you make them. I don't know. It's not a huge deal, but it would just be sucky.
Yeah, I don't. Just stick with what you got. I mean, if anything, sell, and maybe that is something that can set expectations moving forward of like, this is a rebuild. It's a clear rebuild. We aren't pretending anymore. Like,
Yeah,
players need to get better, but this is where we're starting now.
it is an interesting thought of like, do you even make that signal? And is it like, I don't know. It would be interesting if that like even bought the front office more time to be like, hey, we had to get off of some of these contracts. This is what we are paying for from, previous seasons going on. I don't know. It'll be very interesting. My guess is the Packers are the Packers, and it's just there's no move period would be my bigger guess. But all right, let's talk to something way more fun, which is key takeaways from Packers Vikings. So, Justis, I will cede the floor to you first. Anything new that you noticed? Anything that you wanted to go over from that wonderful game that was Packers Vikings Week 8?
New, not really. I mean, they were heavily penalized. I know they've been really bad at penalties all season. I think they're leading the league now. But 11 is bad. What was it? 99 yards or whatever it was is even worse. When the third play of the game, you run an RPO, no receivers are running a route, and you get an illegal man downfield because the offensive lineman doesn't know the quarterback is doing a scramble drill on a pass play that has no protection because they think it's a run play. I think that kind of sets the tone for what kind of a game it was. I am consistently appalled at how poorly some of these wide receivers are coached. The fact that they're able to run wrong routes or not even run a route entirely, and they're consistently getting playing time. Matt LaFleur talked about last week. We need to get Dontavian Wicks on the field, and I know Dontavian Wicks. Oh my God, these guys talk about him every week. But this is more about LaFleur saying he wanted to get a guy involved, and then he still plays Reed Dobbs Watson 80% of the snaps in terms of the offensive snap count. Nothing is changing. They're just hoping these players take to the coaching, and through 8 weeks now? They haven't. And I don't know. Like, are these players going to turn it around, or does it look like this the entire season? If it looks like this the entire season, does LaFleur go down with the ship? I mean, what's to make you believe year 3 of Dobbs or Watson is going to be better than, year 1 or 2 where they're making some of these mistakes and stuff? So they better hope this offense starts to alleviate some of those stressors, because right now it's all bad, and it's bad across the board, and it's bad to the point that they don't look prepared. It's embarrassing. Like, I remember last week I talked to Arif Hassan to break down, the Packers Vikings game. He's a Vikings guy.
Yep.
And I was like, look, they're gonna blow some routes, and it's gonna look terrible. And he's like, what do you mean they're gonna blow? Like, I had to like explain it to him, and I'm like, you'll see, dude. Like, you'll see. This is not a normal thing that even young teams usually experience. Like, usually guys at least know the plays. This is odd. And it's the fingers keep, all the data keeps pointing back to like, maybe this is a coaching problem. And, be it Matt or the coaches who are serving under him, or, Stenovich being in a role potentially that he shouldn't have filled, or like, why is Dick Butkus's nephew coaching my offensive line? Like, there's all sorts of questions that you can start asking, right? I just don't know where the buck stops, right? Like, if this is someone's sword to fall on, who's the big one? What is the ultimate?
I'm with you. I think it has to be LaFleur, right? And I get that there are like a million variables, and I get that like nothing really feels great. I think there's clearly been some misses from a personnel standpoint. I think some of the contracts they did and the decisions that they made when they were trying to keep things all together ended up being not great decisions, both, looking in hindsight, but certainly looking at the contracts the way that they're set up now. There's a lot of things that just went poorly. I think some injury issues have certainly plagued the Packers as well. Obviously, we know the David Bakhtiari situation. Aaron Jones just not being himself since the touchdown in week 1 has not helped this team in any capacity. But when you have players consistently that look worse than they used to look. Whether it's, I mean, Jenkins, I thought had a nice week this week, but in general, you go back, a couple years ago to Elton Jenkins to now, he looks worse to me. John Runyon Jr. from 2021 looks way better than John Runyon Jr. 2023. Josh Myers, I don't care what anyone is saying in the Packers organization, is not, spoiler alert, playing the best football of said career. Zach Tom is probably one of the only players that is actually playing better football this year over last year. There's a handful, maybe Devontae Wyatt we can probably put in that group. I think Quay Walker from time to time shows flashes of that. Rashan Gary, maybe. There's not very many. Watson looks worse than he did last year. Dobbs looks worse than he did last year. Even Jordan Love looks better early in the season than he looks right now. There's so many players that are showing signs of regression rather than progress. And what else do you point that to? I mean, there's a lot of talented football players on this team. There's a lot of players that we have seen play at least solid to good football for this team that aren't playing solid to good football right now. I don't know what else you put that on. I'm at a loss to put it on anything else.
The way the Packers are looking right now, it seems like it's going to be a struggle for them to get to 6 wins, right?
I would agree.
Their next three games, I almost said wins, are, I believe it's Rams, Steelers, Chargers.
Chargers is what I'm gonna say. Yeah.
Yeah. We played the scheduled game. Tex and I did on the APC feed. He says, they probably go 1-2 during that stretch. Okay, well, coming out of that stretch, we're talking about the Kansas City Chiefs and the Detroit Lions. We're talking about a Green Bay Packers team that is 3-9 on, the second week of December. Mike McCarthy was 4-7-1 when he was canned, right? Like, if you can't get to 6 wins in the NFL, it doesn't really matter what the expectations are. Like, you usually get fired if you're a veteran coach. I checked this stat by hand last night because I could not figure out a way that I can get this sorted out. All right. So here's a list of names. This is what this list of names is going to be an example of. These are coaches who won fewer than 6 games in their 5th year or later with one single squad. Okay, following so far. Didn't win a Super Bowl, prior to that streak because you have guys like, John Harbaugh or like John Gruden got, situations where they went all in, actually did the thing and then kind of regressed for a year or whatever.
Sure.
These are all Super Bowl era qualifiers, not including strike season. So there's no like this team finished 5-3 and they qualify for the stat or anything like that. There's 120 qualifying head coaches who fell under this bucket. These are all the guys who were retained after, a 5-win season or worse and got to keep their job. And this is sorted by win percentage. Jason Garrett, bad start at the top. Dan Reeves, Marvin Lewis, Wayne Fontes, Jeff Fisher. This is the cutoff for above 500. Everyone else is below 500 in terms of their win percentage. No, not career. After that season,
Gotcha.
right? So we're looking moving forward. Like, was it worth it to keep them? Bart Starr, John McKay, Jack Del Rio, Sam Rudigliano. Don't know who that is. Dick Nolan. Shout out to Mike Smith, Jack Patera, Dave Wanstead, and John Robinson. It's almost never worth it to keep guys who are coaching teams that are this bad, this late into their tenure. And that includes, like for like Jason Garrett, right? The reason he qualifies is Tony Romo got hurt that one year, right? And stuff like that. Dan Reeves came off of, I think it was 3 AFC titles in the previous 4 seasons. And then outside of that, the highest win percentage is Marvin Lewis at 34%, right?
Jeez.
No one gets to keep their jobs. And if they do keep their jobs, it almost never works out. If Matt doesn't get this figured out, he's going to get fired. That's the situation right now. And I know no one wants to look at that because they're like, well, look, he could change all the coaches underneath him and he can change the defensive coordinator and we can, they're going to have to take their medicine again next season. And who do you think? It's easier to pitch a better core of, and this is going to be tough to hear. It's going to be easier to pitch a better group of assistant coaches to be hired in Green Bay if we're under a different head coach than if we're under Matt LaFleur, because they're coming in year one on the hot seat. Who knows if they're going to have to move a third time in 2 years, right?
Yep.
It's a serious conversation to have. Like, you're
How
talking
many
about a
how many
Packers
guys
team.
can you let go too? If you're like, can you let go of everyone? Like, can you build a staff from
And then
scratch?
at that point, what's even the point? And then your biggest issue is still just execution on the offensive side, and the only guy that you kept is the offensive play caller. Like, I don't
Yeah,
get, like, that's what I'm saying. Like, a lot of things are gonna have to be evaluated in Green Bay if this continues. And again, like, if they're 3-9 on December 11th or whatever it is, do they say like, hey, we want to give Versace a shot because like he might be a candidate for this job. Like, let's just try him out at this point.
I think so. This week is now so interesting because you've got potential Brett Rippon fest. I would assume it's going to be. I don't think there's a chance Stafford plays in this. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong, but
The
I would
fact that they try to sign Wolford kind of
off the
hints
practice
at
squad.
that, right?
Yes, I would think no Stafford this week, which means it's Brett Rippon at Lambeau in a game you cannot lose if you're Green Bay. Like, just because, like, to your point, I don't think they go into Pittsburgh and win right now. You have the Chargers at home. I don't think that is going to go great. You've got Lions on the road.
Lions
That's
and
not going to go
Chiefs.
great. Then the Kansas City Chiefs, to your point. If they don't win against the Brett Rippon led, and here's the like bigger thing, right? I can say those next four after that are probably going to be losses. Like, at least they feel like losses in general. If they can't beat the Brett Rippon led Rams, I mean, I don't even know where you go from that
I mean, we're
standpoint.
talking about a 9-game losing streak.
Yeah. And in a
Like,
game they probably shouldn't have won against New Orleans, that, New Orleans, yeah. Yeah. And then it's not like any team on their schedule is just like, oh, yep, chalk it up. That's a win. Like, they still have to go to New York after that. Tampa is played. I know that Tampa's not great, but they've
Tampa's
played better
decent.
football.
Yeah.
They've played better football than Green Bay has. At Carolina, which at that point, like, again, if you maybe won one game up until that point, it's not like Green Bay's going in with a ton of confidence into Carolina. Then you go to Minnesota, and I guess their quarterback situation might be interesting enough. And then Chicago at home here. I don't know. Like,
Yeah,
it's going to get uglier before it gets better. And they could get a
for
small
sure.
reprieve this week with a win against the Rams, maybe. But if they don't, then look the heck out.
Yeah, I mean, there's no way around it. This is a must win for Green Bay this weekend. If they can't get this done, this is gonna get ugly. This is not going to be a fun ride. And I wouldn't be surprised if stuff starts spinning out of the locker room at that point. I mean, we're already at the point where Zach Tom is saying like the team is not prepared, right? Like, coming into games, and Russell Douglas is saying offenses are playing the defense differently because they know that the Packers cannot score. And I know the defense isn't saying that as a, yeah, here's our excuse type of thing. Like, they always end
Right.
all that stuff with like, they score 17, we have to hold them to 16, right? Or something like that. Um, but the fact that the confidence is slipping on the offensive side is that's terrible. And that's how you spiral, is by having this and then saying like, "Oh, we want to trade for Saquon Barkley to bail us out." Like, it never works, man. It never works long term. So,
Did you see my tweet of first half drives for Green Bay?
dude, they didn't have what? They have 9 points in 25 drives. I saw.
9 points in 25 drives. 9 points, nine total points.
Boo! We
Here's the
hate to
really
see
fun.
that.
Here's the really fun aspect of that. They scored 9 points. 3 of those points were based on a turnover that Green Bay got. I think it was against Detroit in their territory, like right at the beginning of the game, where I think it was at Rudy Ford that had the interception.
Yeah.
And that was the one where he could have ran the quarterback over and instead just went right out of bounds. They scored 3 points on a 4-play 0-yard drive. So that was just based on the defense, but 9 points total. They did have a missed field goal where they actually put a 47-yard drive together in there. But the even better part is that on one of their 18 punts in those 25 drives, the punt was returned for a touchdown. So they scored 9 points, and one of those punts was returned for a touchdown for 7 points.
They're net 2.
They're net 2 just on that alone. That's not even including the 2 interceptions, I think one of which was deep in their own territory, which would have netted 3 points. I think it ended up more. But like, they are net negative on offense. They're net negative on offense. And like, even if the defense didn't allow points, like other than the punt return for the touchdown and like off of the 2 interceptions that Love threw, where they were basic, at least one of them, I know they were in scoring position right away. Like they were net negative on offense in those 25 drives just on that alone, which is unbelievable.
It's not normal for an offense to be this bad again.
No,
even in a developmental year. Like, guys,
no, not at all.
I'm the one who, in the first week of September, I'm saying like, hey, they have a $40 million offense. Like, let's set expectations correctly. But like the one thing people always say, right, is like the one thing you can't control is like effort, right? And what the hell does $40 million have to do with no one running a route on a play that they worked and scripted all week in practice, third play of the game, and no one's running a route, right? Like, that has not, like, there seem to be cracks that are systematic in the thought of, is LaFleur or this coaching staff the staff that we actually want to develop young players, which is what the job is right now, and is going to be the job through at least, I don't know, 2026, right?
At
Like,
least
that's the job. So like, that's what you have to solve right now. It's not about like, is this fair to release LaFleur when he was only given, these guys on offense? It's, these guys didn't get any better in this season. We burned a year of their precious rookie contracts that is, we're saying is the lifeblood of this organization, right? What do we think the problem was? Do we need to replace all the players? Do we need to replace the coaching staff? Like, something needs to change moving forward, and the team is going to have very few assets in terms of being able to spend money in free agency and stuff like that. So I don't know.
Somebody forgot to give the memo that to Jordan Addison that he's young and he's a rookie, so he can't. You're not allowed to run routes that well and get open that easily in the NFL. It takes a couple of years to really get into that. I'm with you. And I've said from prior to the season, I didn't really care from a record standpoint. 2-5. I wouldn't have expected it, but I wouldn't have been shocked by it by any stretch of the imagination. This is nothing for me. I can't speak for everyone. Can't speak for you, obviously. This has nothing to do with record for me. If they were 2-5 and won their last 2 games and were trending in the right direction, cool. Like I can understand that. And if things were showing signs of progress each week, and we've said it before, we'll say it, like, progress isn't always linear. Sometimes you take 3 steps back before you take 4 steps forward, whatever it might be. There's just so precious little from a positive standpoint to take away. And and I know you can't have 25 first half drives in 5 games and look completely and utterly incompetent. You mentioned
that's what they practice. That's what they practice. Exactly. That's what they say they game plan for. LaFleur says those are the best plays that they have coming into these games. Like, how many more times do we need to see this before we start taking the hint, guys? Like, this isn't going well. I haven't seen anything change from, week 2 to week 8 at this point. And if this continues for another third of the season, quarter of the season, like, I don't know if Matt's going to get fired in season, guys.
Yeah,
that could happen.
I don't know that they will do it, but I'm not saying that they shouldn't based on what we've seen and I'm willing to let it play out a little bit longer to see if like they can get this turned around. But like I said, this week is a massive freaking week, and I don't even know where to like go from like, but you mentioned the play. So just to kind of bring people through this, you've got the first 2 plays on offense. The third play, Jordan Love looks right. There's 3 wide receivers to the right. All 3 of them are run blocking. Everyone up front is run blocking. It's a run play. Matt LaFleur in his press conference today said it was a bad play call and it's on him. I know that Matt will legitimately own some things. He didn't call a play for Jordan to look right and have 3 guys run blocking. Like, it was either or like, it clearly was a run call because everyone else besides Jordan on the play is running. It had to be because the receivers are off. I think it's yesterday I said it was Dobbs. I think it's Watson because the corner on Dobbs is close enough, but the corner on Watson's off. I think Watson's supposed to run a little out route to the outside, something quick to the outside. They throw it to him, they pick up the 1 yard, and it's easy. But instead, nobody's looking. And I don't know if that's on the receiver not getting the check. I don't know if that's Jordan not making. When I watched it back today on all 22, Jordan doesn't do much. He does like a quick little look over, but not that I could glean or dissect of like any sort of real like hand signal or anything. So I don't know if that's just something that's like a silent thing where Watson has to recognize it and know if the player is off that he's got to go on the route. And he didn't do it. And again, it could have been Dobbs. It could have been one of the other. It's hard to say without knowing, but clearly not on the same page. This is the third play of the game on 3rd and 1. The third play of the game on 3rd and 1. So they have the penalty. Jordan makes a crazy play to get out of it, throws the ball downfield. Dobbs comes up with a catch. But of course, Rashid's downfield, which has nothing to do with Rashid because it's a called run.
Don't blame him. He thinks it's going to be a run. How the hell is he supposed to know?
Can't do anything. So you get a next play back. Then you get a free play. On the free play, you see the tight end coming open. There's a guy in his face. I don't care. They take the shot downfield. No big deal. But you get now another opportunity at 3rd and 1. And this is the play that I post where Rashid misses his block. You got the belly flop by Josh Myers. John Runyon Jr. looks completely like he's going the wrong direction on the play. And Zach Tom after the play is telling him, hey, you need to go that way. You've got Christian Watson matched up on a linebacker. Just like these have to be your core plays. Like the 5th play of the game, the 3rd play of the game, the 5th play of the game, 3rd and 1, both situations. You had 2 opportunities. You had 2 opportunities on 3rd and 1 in the first 5 plays of the game to pick up a yard and to just execute a basic play that I'm sure they should have practiced multiple times in the past. And you have complete F-ups all over the place on both of them. What else can we possibly glean from that? Other than you either have a team full of idiots, coaches that don't know how to get through to the players, or a practice that is not setting players up for success based on I don't know. It's
exasperating. I mean, again, you try to explain some of these problems to other teams, fans, and they're like, what the hell are you talking about? This isn't normal. This is evidence of a very poorly coached team, or a team that, I mean, to your point, can get through with them, right? Like, I don't, maybe these guys are smart and they just can't get through to these guys. Like, what does that matter? To me, there's no difference between that and then being poorly coached, right? The product is the same thing. The question is just, does that change, or do you have to change it, right? And that's the part that the Packers are in. So,
and not to beleaguer this either, but from a change standpoint, it's not only that it's not changing, it's not only that it's staying the same, it's getting worse, which is what's so concerning. And this is not the Chiefs and the Ravens. And I know it was one game against the Lions. It's not the 49ers. It's not the Eagles. This is the Broncos, the Raiders, and the Vikings. And in some of those games, the Broncos did everything they could to keep Green Bay in that game. The Vikings did everything they could even in the first half, to keep Green Bay in this game at chunks of time. And Green Bay just can't take it. Actually, it was the Raiders. Sorry, the Raiders did with the play calls at the end to keep Green Bay in.
The Vikings turned the ball over inside the 20 with their backup quarterback, and you scored 10 points.
And no points on that off the turnover.
This is they're getting bad results. And
I was going to ask you,
it's so bad you don't get the mulligan. If it looks this bad, you don't get the mulligan. You're in year 5 as a head coach in the NFL. It should not look this bad. You should have your staff in order to the point that, with the full preseason, having these guys play, having the 2 joint training camps, with the Patriots and Bengals, having everyone in for OTAs outside of the cornerbacks, right? Like, it should not look this bad. And that's at some point becomes an indictment of the head coach.
Big time. I'm with you. I was going to ask you about Yosh Nijman versus Rasheed Walker this week. I don't even know that I have the stomach for it anymore. But based on what you saw this week, do you have a preference one way or the other?
I think Nijman is a little bit more consistent. I think their hope, and this is not inside information or anything like that. Like, I think the hope was Walker is on such a cheap contract that if they could get a left tackle out of that cheap contract, that would go a long way. And I understand that thought, but they are now at the point where Walker had messed up so much that him being the left tackle of the future is probably in question. And then at
Yep.
that point, it's probably just better to play the guy who's a little bit more consistent, and that is now Nyman, right? So that's kind of what I think about the entire situation. I think they'll probably be a better team for playing Nyman at left tackle moving forward if that's what they do end up doing. I know LaFleur said today, that it's part of their evaluation process every week, and he's not going to name a starter or anything like that. I think it'll probably be Nyman moving forward. So that's just kind of my thought. Speaking of a guy who's regressing, I mean, Walker was pitch perfect for 2-3 weeks to start the season and has looked pretty tough since then, right? So
Yeah. Unfortunately, a lot of players had their best game against the Bears in week 1.
yeah.
Haven't seen a ton of positives since then, although that wasn't obviously Sheed because Bakhtiari was in that game, but I digress. All right, we've got potentially Brett Rippon at home this week. We've got either Yash Nyman or Rasheed Walker at left tackle. Who knows? A team that's regressing, but Rashan Gary on a brand new contract. Justis, anything else you want to go over before I go take some anti-nauseous medicine?
I don't think so. I think we hit everything. Hope we're better this week. Like, that's all I got.
That'd be nice. Yeah, it's tough. It's really hard. And again, I think there are so many variables with this team, and it's tough to figure out exactly what the constant issue is. But like at that point, that's what the head coach is for, is to figure out, like, when you have all those variables, is to put them all together and to make something out of it and at least show signs of progress. And I know we've been over it a million times, but we haven't seen that. And again, at some point that has to fall on the head coach. And it does. I said the other day, like, I know people want, like, they want blood right now. They're, we got to have change everywhere. Like, multiple people throughout the organization, players, coaches, front office, are in the process of losing their jobs. The Green Bay Packers are probably going to give them maybe the rest of the season, or at least a good chunk of the rest of the season, just to double check and make sure that they're not being rash into jumping to any conclusions, just because that's who the Packers are. But if things don't change, there are a ton of players, coaches, personnel people, scouts, etc., that are currently in the process of losing said job. So to quote a great movie, there will be blood. It may not be as soon as people want right now, but it is in the process of happening one way or the other if this keeps up. And hopefully it like turns around like overnight, and all of a sudden they run off 8 wins in a row. That'd be great. I would love that. But if it doesn't, it's going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, I have no personal problems with Matt LaFleur. I'm rooting the best for him. I know
Exactly.
coaching sucks. The fact that you have to bounce around if you're doing well or if you're doing poorly is tough on families. I understand all that. They put in a ton of hours, all that. But at the end of the day, this Packers team looks bad. They look like they're staring down the barrel of 3-9, and I just cannot envision the standard is the standard in the NFL for veteran coaches. No one survives that, right? Like, Andy Reid got fired in Philadelphia. That stuff happens. Like that, those things happen. Sometimes the right guy, the right time, the right fit, like, those things don't totally mesh up. And I'm sure LaFleur would get another head coaching opportunity somewhere else. But as it looks right now, if they continue this, he's gonna get canned this season. Hopefully it doesn't come down to that. Hopefully they figure something out and we get to watch some fun football, the next couple of Sundays. So
98-ish, maybe 99% of people, when they take a job in the NFL, whether as player, coach, or GM, are taking that job to eventually get fired. Like, it's going to happen, unfortunately. And again, we're not cheering for it. We're not hopeful for it. We would rather just everyone go on to Hall of Fame coaching and playing careers and a lot of Super Bowls. Right now, it's not exactly trending in that direction. Justis, you are amazing. Tell everyone where we can find your work and plug anything you want to plug.
Yeah, acmepackingcompany.com. I think by the time you listen to this on Tuesday, I should have something up on, that streak of coaches, right? That were kept after having a poor season as, a very veteran head coach like LaFleur is. And then I should have another piece up probably analyzing Rashan Gary's contract and why it's kind of a win-win situation. You can listen to us on the Acme Packing Company podcast feed and find me on Twitter /X/ whatever we call it. at JUMOSQ.
Make sure to give him a follow. Check out Acme Packing Company, one of the absolute best sites out there for all sorts of Packers content. They're doing incredible work. You can find the Pack-A-Day Podcast at Pack-A-Day Podcast on social media. You can follow me at Andy Herman NFL. That will do it for Justis Mosqueda. I'm Andy Herman. Thanks so much for following along. But until next time, and as always, go Pack Go.